a unique right hand technique that can change your whole picking. And I've been using this technique for years now, but I have stopped using this technique, and today we're going to find out why. Here we go. Hey Guitar Champion, what's going on? I'm 𝗚𝗚𝙦𝙦 back from my practice dojo, and welcome to today's video. The technique that you have seen in the clips from the beginning is called thumb bending and thumb flicking. And there are several reasons why certain guitar players are using this kind of technique, even though I would say 70% without purpose and with not really knowing that they are even using it. And in today's video, I want to take a look into why they are using it, why I used it in the past, why I stopped using it, because it can cause some problems in your picking and one can be extremely dangerous. So I highly recommend to watch this video till the end. Okay, and reason number one why people are bending their thumb for speed picking and why I did it is because it's easier in the first place. When we are bending our thumb, we are picking with the side of the pick, not the flat side, the body of the pick, the so-called shoulder side. And because we're using less space of the pick and we're gliding more through the strings, it requires less energy. At least it feels like it requires less energy. The truth is a little bit different. And the second reason why people are executing this thumb movement is to change the direction of the pick slant. You see, when we have our thumb bended and we're playing with the shoulder side of the pick, we're instantly in some sort of downward pick slant direction. And now when we flatten our thumb again and we're playing with the flat side of the string, we are in some sort of slight upward pick slant direction. And this is the main reason why, for example, Petrucci is using it in the constant motion solo, which is one of the hardest Petrucci licks. And Petrucci was never really able to reproduce that lick so clearly in a live version. There's no live version out there that I've seen where he really could nail that lick. But that's more because he stopped using the wrist motion and more started to use the arm motion, which in general was a downgrade of his technique in the last 15 years. But I have made a whole video about this on my channel. You can watch it right here. Just click the information card. Or maybe better watch it after this video. And if you haven't yet, of course, subscribe to this channel to gain more knowledge about shredding and guitar techniques. And the last reason why, for example, Rick Graham is using this bending technique is because he's using economy picking. And with the help of the thumb flicking and the bending technique, he can push his pick a little bit more towards the next string where he wants to sweep to. And he can instantly, after that sweep, go back to the alternate picking technique. But economy picking is a forbidden technique and a forbidden word here on this channel. At least for now. I don't know, maybe in a few years I will only do economy picking, but for now we want to do alternate picking only, because alternate picking means purest form of freedom. At least in our guitar playing. Alright, but now let's talk a little bit about the problems with this kind of technique. And let's start again with the pick slant direction. The reason why I highly recommend to rather use the rotational movement of our forearm to change the pick slanting direction and not the flicking of the thumb is because we have more control over the distance and the amount that we want to rotate. Sometimes in certain situations it requires a higher pick slant degree, for example when we want to execute a string skipping lick or something like that. And sometimes we need less degree of the specific pick slant. And we can easily control that with the forearm rotation, not necessarily with flicking the thumb. Here it is so much harder to control the amount of flickering in that small movement than in the wider movement of the rotation. The next problem is that it is against my rule of AUCE, avoiding unnecessary consumption of energy. I've created that method because I realized the less amount of muscles that we activate while performing a certain movement, the faster, the more precise, and the longer we can execute that specific movement. It is easier for our brain to transport the signals to our spinal cord, to the motor units, the motor neurons in our muscles, etc., etc. So I took a really deep look into, okay, what kind of muscles do we need to perform a really good speed picking technique? So the whole concept of muscles is really interesting, and here I want to give a shout out to everybody who's owning the ZEN of Speedpicking or who's member of my ZEN of Shred Academy, my Patreon community, because soon in the next couple of days I will release release big videos on both platforms where I explain in detail all the muscles that we have in our arm that are required to do not only speed picking, but also to do left-hand kind of chisel. So I highly recommend either to join the ZEN of Shred Patreon Academy with only $5 a month, or to get the ZEN of Speedpicking, my big online masterclass about speed picking with more than 50 licks, 10 etudes, 4 workouts, and a bulletproof 12-month practice plan. Check the link in the description box, there you can get more information. And basically we only need the muscles of two motion when it comes to speed picking: the wrist abduction and the forearm rotation. The wrist abduction is our main motor when it comes to speed picking, not the arm, not the wrist flexion or tension. It is the wrist abduction, and the rotational movement is extremely important for the pick slant direction. So these two movements, perfect. Including any more muscle activation besides that can cause some problems, like for example when you hold your pick like this with the flexed fingers, or when you bend your thumb like this. More muscle means that the signal and the information is more distracted, because when we activate more muscles, it's so much harder to recruit and isolate individual muscles that are actually important to execute this kind of movement. The third reason why I stopped doing it is a sound reason, because when we're using the flat side of our pick, and for that we have to have a really straight thumb, we can gain much more attack and much more and a much clearer tone out of our picking. And my goal is to have the full range of articulation and the full range of dynamic in my picking, so I can change as much as I want. I will give you a demonstration now on how much it can have an effect on your tone when you're playing with the shoulder side of your pick, or when you're playing with the flat side of the pick. The amount of pressure that I have in my forearm and in my wrist stays the same. I only change the angle and the degree compared to the string. You may already have seen it, but before you ask, yes, I have always this little bend in my thumb. That's just a natural thing. This would be engaging muscles unnecessarily again. So this is an extremely bended thumb. This is my normal neutral flat thumb. Here, individual anatomy is definitely a thing where we have to take a look in our anatomy in our hands, how it is shaped, and my thumb is shaped like this. Now, one reason to maybe bend the thumb is because you want to have that immediate change of articulation. And here's, for example, a clip of a young guitar player, the next generation of shredders. I absolutely love the next generation of shredders. They are crazy technically. His name is 𝙬𝙬𝙀, or however you want to pronounce it. And in this lick, he is using this kind of technique to gain more articulation on a specific amount of notes, and then he reduces the dynamic by changing his picking technique. And I absolutely love the sound of this. So check this out. But you can see it is a slight movement in your thumb. It's not as big as for Petrucci, for example, and he's doing it probably by purpose. So this was based on a musical decision and not based on just sheer luck because he was doing it out of accident or something like that. Before I'm going to the last reason and the main reason why I changed this technique, I want to talk on how I changed it. And the number one tool that helped me to change it, and I started really focusing on changing it so it's not a lot of time since I've changed it, but the number one tool that really helped me is our good old friend, the mirror. Hey, getting a mirror was an extremely really good investment, and I highly recommend it to everybody, because then you can get instant feedback of what we are doing. You don't have to record yourself first, maybe putting the recording on the computer when you're filming yourself with the phone or something like that, re-roll the recording, etc, etc. You can have instant feedback. And there, every time when I was playing a speed picking lick, I was checking my thumb. Is it bended or is it straight? Yes, to stabilize your thumb so that you can play with the flat side of the pick more, which means more resistance and more space. Yes, that requires a little bit more strength and more force in your wrist. But after doing this for a while, the muscles, they get used to it, and I'm extremely relaxed with my wrist, even though that I'm not playing with the shoulder side, but I'm playing with the flat side, which is more space of the pick. Nowadays, I have like 80% control over my thumb. Here and there, it can happen that in the flow, sometimes my thumb is still doing this kind of flickering, especially when I do the pick slant change and pick slant direction. Way how I practice, what I'm practicing, my focus. I documented all of that in the ZEN of Speedpicking if you want to know more. But still, I'm evolving, I'm changing, I'm getting better and better. Guitar education, as I always say, it's on a child kind of level of education right now, especially compared to instruments like piano or violin, where we have a designated technique, where we know, okay, everybody who's doing this technique, you have the same requirements to express yourself musically, and there are no technical boundaries. And here on guitar, you have some players who are still able to play extremely well, even though they have bad posture, bad technique, like Vinnie Moore, like Steve Morse, Marty Friedman, all these kind of guys. They are lucky guys. I always say they had a lot of luck that they are able to play this kind of music, even though that they have such an unergonomic kind of technique. But 99% of all guitar players, they didn't have this kind of luck. You, my dear viewers as well, me included, I have to work at my ass off and research a lot on how to do things with the right hand to being on the level that I am right now. I mean, it already costs a marriage. And that's a good thing why we have educators nowadays, like Anton Opperin, Matt Wright, Ben Eller, the past Troy Grady, not necessarily the current Troy Grady, but the past Troy Grady. And I include myself now as well to define a technique that is based on medical and physical facts so that everybody has the same starting point, that everybody can achieve the same things. Why sometimes opinions changed, and my opinion has changed as well, because in the past I recommended to bend your thumb when you're playing fast. I don't do this anymore. I wouldn't recommend it anymore. So sometimes things change, perspective changes, opinion changes, but that's not bad at all. It would be bad if I wouldn't admit it. And now let's talk about the final nail in the coffin, why I start changing and stopping the bending thumb, the thumb bending technique. And it is because it severes a lot of damage and problems and pain in our wrist and our forearm. You know, the joint that we have here and the connected muscle to that joint that activates that joint, they are designed to grab on something, to have that force for a really long time, but they are not designed to flick like this. Oh, that's really painful and really damaging. And I can remember I had to prepare a tour in 2022 where I was a substitute guitar player for a German deathcore band. We went on a European tour, and I started to have a lot of damage and a lot of pain in my forearm. And I start realizing there already in 2022, it has something to do with bending my thumb all the time while playing guitar. Now, in there, I already start changing something, but I really did it last year when I realized, okay, I have to be on tour with Alkaloid, with a technical death metal band, and especially I'm going to be on tour next year. In this case, it's now this year, 2024, it was next year, it is now this year. I will be on tour with the power metal band Rhapsody. So I start changing my technique, and then I get another good side effect by using the flat side of the pick with a straightened thumb compared to using the shoulder side of the pick with a bended thumb is there as well. My articulation, my precision, my tone, and my timing was heavily improved. And now as well in the band Megalife, my German Megadeth tribute band, when I play riffs like Holy Wars or something like that, it feels so much more controlled and so much better to play it with the flat side of the pick. Even though, as again, in the beginning, it was quite of unusual and kind of hard to have the stabilization of the thumb, but there I now highly recommend to use this technique to everybody. All right, so much for today's video. I wish you a really good start into the week. I wish you a lot of fun learning, practicing, and mastering the guitar. I hope I'm going to see you in my next video. Cheers and power your progress. Bye.